I'm going to do a reading presentation because this is the easiest way for not going on different branches, but stick to the line of reflection I've been working at. And most of the work has been done with two ideas. One of them is the work I've done with Blanca Jimenez and has already been published in several articles and chapters. One of them is of water and sanitation by EarthCan. One of the chapters was made by Water and Sanitation is the name of the book. And the other one is a small book that was called Los Pendientes del Agua en Mexico. That's for the data. And I'm working with a team integrated by Karina Kloster, a political scientist, and Jordi Vera. He's an environmental engineer. And we're working on a conceptual and methodological framework to work on a new reading, a reading of the Kutsamala system as an hydrosocial system. So these are some of a draft of these ideas and working them in water quality. Well, solving water quality in Mexico is not an easy task, despite efforts made by the government since the 70s only to expand water and not only to expand water and sanitation services, but also to improve the regulation of urban, industrial, and agricultural disposals. The country has an important delay in achieving water quality. An important issue in this delay relates to the absence of reliable data enabling us to know about water quality in the country with certain amount of confidence. Data for sanitation services in Mexico only refers to the collection of wastewater from households and does not consider wastewater treatment and its safe disposal. In fact, of the total water waste produced, only a fraction is collected and treated, while the rest is unsafely disposed into the sewage system and though the environment. This happens both with municipal and industrial water waste. On the fourth of the 1,200 cubic meters per second produced by municipalities and industry, only 87% is collected in drains, but of these, only 21% is actually treated. The low level of sanitation is reflected in the poor quality of water sources and the high rates of diarrhea diseases still observed in the country. I'm sorry. In regard to water supply coverage, the official data do not reflect existing quality problems, especially in terms of drinkability, understood as the fulfillment of country's drinking water norm. This is a perturbing situation due to the lack of safe municipal and industrial wastewater disposal schemes. Water sources are becoming increasingly contaminated, as shown by several studies reporting pollution problems in water sources across the country, like Alcocer, Carrillo, and Denver, Rodriguez, Armenta, and Jimenez and Chavez, among others. In spite of this water treatment process, have remained unchanged for at least the past 40 to 50 years, and are mostly limited only chlorination. However, the pollution of Mexico's water sources includes the presence of toxic and non-toxic organic matters, nitrates, metals, fluorides, as well as a wide variety of microorganisms resistant to chlorine, as Espinosa and Garcia and Massari have already pointed out. Yet it is estimated that only between 85% or 95%, depending on the data, if it's from the Health Ministry or the National Water Commission of Water, it is chlorinated. The rest isn't. In urban settlements, water services is highly heterogeneous. Pipeline water is distributed mainly to downtown business and medium and high-income residential areas. Most other domestic users obtain their water from water tankers, which provide a limited amount of low-quality water at a high price. For instance, the federal district has a population of 8 million people and accounts for 21.8% of the national GDP, but around 1 million inhabitants, the 14% of the total, are supplied through water tankers. For those receiving piped water at home, the quality of the service is not necessarily much better. The water flow is often intermittent and does not meet minimal drinking water standards, as Jimenez sustains. As a result, households used to have their own storage tanks and indoors pumping systems in order to have permanent access to water, but need to buy safe water to drink from vendors or have domestic systems to make the water drinkable. This increases the cost of water by 30 to 50% over the official price. For a 4-member family living on a minimum wage, drinking water represents 11 to 21% of their income. In an attempt to understand why Mexico has a setback in achieving the issue of water quality in the country, with Blanca Jimenez, we analyzed the relationship between the deficit in water and sanitation services and factors such as water availability, economic situation, legal framework, institutional capacity, and water policy. We concluded that making safe water available to all sectors of Mexican society can only be accomplished by adopting an integrated and multidimensional approach in which water and sanitation provision is organized through a diversity of arrangements and options that take account of the different local conditions in a regional perspective. Such strategies have proven to be successful in many developed and developing countries and range from municipal ownership and management with outsourcing of non-core operations, improved public-private cooperation, regional, supramunicipal cooperation, cooperative models, community ownership and management, among others. As previously stated, we can conclude that the problem is not mainly economic or technological. In this sense, I consider of importance to deepen in other aspects, which may have an impact on achieving a better water quality. We are accustomed to think the solution of problems related to water in a fragmented way from the perspective of the different disciplines. The solution of the problem linked to water and its quality is complex and multidimensional. For all the above, I would like to address the issue of water quality in Mexico by questioning why is it so difficult to set into interaction different ways of solving water and sanitation access and making this difference part of a public policy. My proposal is to see the problem from the perspective of the social nature of water, in the sense that society produces the quality of water with the culture, knowledge, practices, economies, ideas, meanings, values, and needs that provides it, and confront it with the unilateral institutional construction of water, of what water is and water quality. To be course to this reflection, I would like to take into consideration the following questions. How do we conceive the relationship between water and society? We can conceive it as a duality, two different entities interrelated, based primarily on paradigm of domination of nature, or as a unity with multiple determinations based on the paradigm of complexity. Linton, in his book, What is Water? The History of a Modern Abstraction, introduces what he calls the historical and cultural character of water. In his terms, water is what we make of it. And the main premise in the conception of modern water is that there has been a separation between the natural and social realms, and sometime in the 19th century, raided water of its social nature. Water has been reduced to an element, H2O, a unique and universal connotation. It has been emptied of its historic nature, as Peña sustains. It refers to the form or forms in which we conceive water in each historical period, in which always prevails a hegemonic construction which hinders the registration of other forms of conceiving it that preexist. From the perspective of Linton, hegemonic water construction refers to a social order which decides about their meanings, on the uses of water, on the institutions, laws, and the authorities that are in charge of managing it. Also on techniques and on the distribution of the benefits derived from its assignment. In this context, he asked how we were taught to produce the idea of water as an abstraction, as a compound of hydrogen and oxygen synthesized in the chemical formula H2O. Water is then formed by two chemical elements, unfamiliar to ecological, cultural, social, political factors, and power. So its handling is relatively easy. In short, what the modern construction of water leaves out is the social nature. In this perspective, water quality is a result of the practices, ideas, meanings, resources, values, and needs that society in a particular historical period grants. Therefore, we can't assume only one way to understand and assess the water and its quality. On the other hand, there will be so many ways to understand it and appreciate it as forms of social organization existence. For example, those of traditional, rural, indigenous communities, and as organized society, among others. On this diversity which persists, the hegemonic construction of modern water is imposed. How do we achieve water quality with this diversity? At this point, the dimension of power becomes a central issue, and therefore the concept of hydrosocial cycle from the critical geography expressed in the development of political ecology is very relevant. A central premise of the critical geography, as Swingodow states, is that the circulation of water is a combined physical and social process, a hybrid social natural flow that blends nature and society inseparably. This idea of circulation invites to understand how water, capital, and power flows, how water, capital, and power flows are materially linked. According to Maidment, cited by Larsman and Grosso, the notion of hydrosocial cycle arising as a hybrid concept of political ecology in opposition to the conventional use of hydrological cycle, which they say continues forever with or without human activity, points to a static notion of the cycle, reverse to the hydrosocial that raises a science whose field is defined between the hydrological and the social knowledge, and therefore is presented as a means of producing critical knowledge about the social nature of water. In this sense, in addition to examining how water flows within the physical environment, atmosphere, surface, subsurface, biomass, the hydrosocial cycle also considers how the water is manipulated, used, concentrated by social stakeholders, struggles for access and control of water, and the mechanisms of exclusion and access expressed in the institutions through factors such as waterworks, legislations, institutions, practices, and symbolic meanings. In synthesis, the social struggle for water access and control, the mechanisms of exclusion and water access and disposal reflect power relations through which the geography of cities is formed and transformed. In this perspective, water quality cannot ignore the power relations involved in the hydrosocial cycle. In the case of Mexico, there was a map I wanted to show, but I don't have it. I have it here, but I didn't put it. The overexploitation of aquifers has increased significantly. Agriculture irrigation areas continue to operate in overexploited aquifers and urban areas equally. Mining concessions have increased significantly, and many of these are already in operation in the country. The technique of fracking is already operating in the region of Coahuila, and the central area of the country has serious problems of pollution of surface and groundwater caused by pollution concentration, household constructions without regulation, industrial and production activities also, not regulated in water use and disposal. With all this, there's also emerging an organized society that has something to say and to do. And this can be the law that couldn't go on, that was presented by the president, is an example of what can happen. This organization, more than 40 universities in the country, specialists of 40 universities in the country, and almost all the civil organized society in ONGs of human right to water and also of water issues, were organized and presented also an initiative of law. I'm not going to tell the story, but it's an example of what is happening and of the two dialogues with a different conception of what is water and how they want to govern this such important, they don't call it resource, but value, that's water. In this perspective, how can we ponder water quality in Mexico? Returning to Linton, we start to consider that there is not a single social nature of water, that we could be facing various and different ways to consider it and build or destroy its quality, and that this diversity of conceptions should be considered in the construction of the heterosocial cycle of water, because they will be present and in action within it. An example of this case, and an example of this in the case of Mexico regarding access to drinking water systems. Since 1981, the municipalities in the country are responsible for operating water systems. And since 1989, treatment and sewage disposal systems. But from the 2,445 municipalities existing in Mexico, only 1,200 have utilities that provide water and sewage services throughout the nation. This figure indicates that the rest of the municipalities, 1,245 and their corresponding towns, operate with a wide variety of forms to access to water, such as water committees, cooperatives, plumbers, community organization, family organization, and many other collective and individual forms that are not considered in the water law. Regarding the eviction of black and gray water, the number of municipalities that manage it is even lower. Few of them have a sewage system. The vast majority of municipalities, mainly rural, have informal systems such as septic, ravines, crevices, direct eviction to rivers, lakes, or the sea, and finally, family form based on tradition and customs of the indigenous communities. Sanitation systems are less well known and explored beyond the treatment plants. Just to give us an idea of the 237,000 liters per second of wastewater generated in the urban centers of the country during 2009, there were only treated around the 37% in any of the 2,029 plants in operation. Summarizing the previous premises, we could say that the issue of water access and quality in Mexico, as well as its governance, is a complex problem which involves contributing to rearticulate and strengthen the relationship that specific social groups have with water in specific territories, whereas the society produces water and builds their access and its disposal with the connotations, values, practices, needs, and technology they have, in this context of struggle for water control, access, and disposal between unequal forces within the framework of a hegemonic construction of the modern idea of water. The challenge is to build critical knowledge about the diversity of practices and conceptions of the social nature of water prevailing in the Mexican society, advancing knowledge of this diversity to contribute to understand the hydrosocial cycle and its complexity for more integral water policy in the country. And that's why we're trying to do and prove make a first empirical experience in Mexico, but it's been done in other places, about the Kutsamala system. Thank you very much.